Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke. I'm so glad you're here. This is a platform that brings you the most up-to-date, groundbreaking information with some of the best minds within the natural products industry, as well as voices from outside of the industry, all of them with great messages and stories to share. If you like what I'm doing, please consider giving me a share, a like, a subscribe, or better yet, do all three of them. You're going to love my guest today. Jason Hunolt is a definite icon in the industry. He has been around for a very long time. There's still a lot of us out there that have been, well seasoned in the industry. And I really think you're going to really enjoy this today. So sit back and enjoy. And remember, always bring your friends back so they can learn as well. Hey, Jason, how you doing?
Doing great. Yourself?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. I'm so pleased that we got a chance to connect and that we get to chat a little bit. I know that you've been in the industry a very long time, as I have, and we've seen a lot of changes in the industry, some wonderful, some questionable, but I think that goes for life in general. So I think there's always good and bad in everything.
Indeed.
So do me a favor, give me a little kind of a synopsis. If someone was to ask you today, what is your favorite thing about our industry? What would you say?
Favorite thing about our industry is self-management, the potential for, as it pertains to the consumer, the ability to study, to look inside, to see what you may require. It facilitates a relationship with ourselves that a lot of us are missing in the modern day, in my opinion. As a practitioner, you see it all the time, that you have to ask people to answer a list of questions in order to get to the bottom of what their experience is and where their gaps might be. So our industry provides a cabinet for people to visit and to pull from once they've established that relationship with themselves.
I think that's wonderful. And I agree 100%. I think that, after the pandemic, I saw a lot more people that were starting to, I guess, maybe crave that interaction and that one-on-one conversation, because let's just face it, as much as the world likes to get us all in the same box, we don't all fit. And we're all coming from a different place. I've told this story before. I have waited and counseled 3 or 4 sets of identical twins over my career. And they're all still around. I've been working with them all for like over 40 years. And although they're genetically identical, and they still today at this point in time still look extremely similar, all of them are coming from a different place. They have different habits. They make different choices. They live different kind of lifestyles. So if you can't put identical twins in the same box, none of the rest of us need to be in the same box. So to your point, that interaction and the creation of a relationship and being able to have those one-on-one conversations and realizing that just because something may work for someone else does not mean it will work for you. So I crave the whole idea of having a great conversation and maybe enlightening someone, and then to the point, enlightening myself as well.
Absolutely.
So, to take it to the next step, I think that a lot of people today are fearful of themselves. And what I mean by that is we've all jumped in and tried things over the years that we thought would be a good idea, but we may not have done our homework. We may not have asked any questions, and myself included, been unsuccessful. And it just gets us to the point where we don't know if we want to try something again. We don't trust ourselves, or we become jaded to it, because we'll blame everything but ourselves. So I think today people are looking for a win. I think they want to feel something, see something, make a difference, feel a difference. And I think our industry can help them do that But like I tell everyone, please come in and ask questions. Go to your local retail stores, go to your mom and pops, go to your brick and mortars, go to your chains and talk with them and, have that conversation. And if they're busy, take the time to wait so that you can still have that interaction.
Absolutely. I mean, a big thing in relationship to all this that a lot of people don't recognize is the same fruit doesn't come from the same root in the case of symptoms. We all, 3 people, 10 people, 1,000 people can be experiencing pain, but it doesn't necessarily come from the same root. The old 5-element theory of Bun and Bao, root and branch. And many people are out here trying to prune branches rather than to look for the root. And I think that's, to some degree, as we've modernized and the turns and revenue related to our natural channel has gone up. A lot of that is starting to get moved to the side where we're used to approach a holistic paradigm. The consumer is able to look at a variety of potential causes to their particular ailments. Nowadays, we're pigeonholing things in as like this style of inflammation requires this plant medicine at this level of constituency at this, under this delivery system, and it's following a pharmaceutical model. And I like very much what Rick Scalzo actually has mentioned a couple of times recently, how we seem to be talking, let's just say on one of the platforms we both share, we're talking about constituents, not about the plants. And, so as a result, what that does for the consumer is it tends to get them thinking in that direction. It's actually pulling us towards trimming branches instead of getting to that root.
And that is so absolutely true. And I think we have to point the finger. I don't know. I'm not one to cast blame, but I am one to point things out. I think that we've become an absolutely, totally impatient world. We want results very, very quickly. We do not accept the responsibility for the situations that we end up in, even though it's mostly our choices, our life choices, our habits, and the things that we do that put us into these categories of health problems and health conditions. And the thing is, we have to realize that being in this impatient world, we have to take a step back and realize that everything, even the solution or the possible end of a bad health situation, can take time. And I think we realistically have to take a step back and realize getting to the source, getting to the roots, to your point, and also getting to the main reason, because there's so many problems we're dealing with today. And sometimes we're looking at the symptom of something that is very far away from the reason that it happened in the first place. But we're not focusing on the reason, we're focusing on the end result. And we have to back up and say, how did I get here? And, what can I do to take me back in time, if you will, to correct exactly what caused this domino effect that brought me to this point right now.
Absolutely. I look to, I love 5-element theory. I feel that 5-element theory and the Ayurvedic Tridosha really conditioned or transformed my consciousness, and over the course of decades now, through a really wonderful appellation they give to each of the organ systems. So in 5-element theory, you've got the 5 elements: metal, earth, fire, wood, water. And those pertain to 2, a yin and a yang function of that metal element, which would be 2 different meridians. What's fascinating is there's also an emotional correspondence, or psychospiritual, some have coined it on as rather. And to see that correlation to a physical condition or the expression of that emotion as pertaining to a meridian where it will have an effect, or it's a diagnostic tool to seeing one of those meridians under duress, is profound in its capacity to give us a relationship with our own, what I consider a spiritual substrate that precurses our physical one.
I agree. And I think where a lot of people don't really get the correlation or the relationship between mental health and overall problems that we are associated with. If you are not in a good place in your mental health, and anxiety and depression have become issues, and you feel that all that together is just giving you just a bad day and causing you just not to be happy in that day, you have to realize that in those states of mind, if you are not getting to the balance of the mental health and reaching out for help, or reaching out for mental support, or for dietary support or nutritional support, or in some cases pharmaceutical support, if you're not correcting it, it affects so many other things. It can affect your immune system, your cognitive function, the way that your body is aging, the way that you think, the way that you feel, the way that you act. So we have to realize that our body is so intricately connected. And sometimes you may look at something and think, well, this is just putting me in a bad mood today. I'm just not feeling really good and I'm overly anxious today. But if you don't take a look to see that it may be happening a little bit more often than you're realizing, because maybe these things have been happening for a while and now you've just adjusted to feeling that way, thinking it's now the norm, it really is connected to other things in the body. And people don't realize the connection where something may be wrong over here. And you said, yeah, it's doing these problems here. But how often do we think that maybe it's also doing some problems over here? And sometimes we have to just slow down, say no, and back up a little bit and see what you can do to correct you. Because if we're not good and we're not balanced and we're not healthy and we're not thinking about all of the things that make us be the best that we can be, we're not any good to ourselves and we're not any good to anyone else. So we have to think there's big pictures out there every day. And this is why I'm such a huge advocate of listening to your body, reaching out at the first sign of feeling something wrong and that you need help and support, and never be intimidated to reach out, because just sometimes a conversation or asking some questions can give you clarity. You'll have a better understanding. So I think that's important. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about our industry is we have such amazing people that are so passionate, so informed, so educated, so engaging. And I just hope that people will use the talents of these people and let them help.
I see that. And it's what I do. I share with you in terms of the independent health food stores. There have been the, trailblazers in this from the very beginning for 50, 60 years in some cases. And there's some really brilliant people that work within those spaces, which, people like yourself and I, we're tasked with going in and engaging with them at the same level that we're doing presently and having a conversation, not speaking to them, but having a conversation and sharing knowledge from the perspective that we have been given it. And as a result, that's conveyed to the end consumer at whatever level they're ready to hear. I often, when I speak to people, I do a few lectures from time to time, and I often will tell people, like, look where you are in the crowd as we're here, and often the employees are here too, and ask yourself, what are you doing? Why are you coming to a health food store? You have decided that there is something missing from your foundation that you're not accruing or acquiring through food or lifestyle in some way, that something you're going to be able to purchase from this store, acquire from this store, is going to add back into your life that facilitate this equanimity or this health that you're looking to achieve. And it's remarkable that very few people have made that association with, gosh, why am I not getting that from what I feed myself in terms of my food, of what I give myself in terms of my exercise? And that's a great conversation to get people started on, because then it leads to another great big shared global conundrum we're in terms of, well, there's companies like the one I work for and that you work for, the regenerative agriculture push. It's the same thing. If that same food, and let's say you're making the right choices, and yet you're still not getting enough nutrition. What is it then? Well, it's a different foundation, but it's a foundation nonetheless. And that's that substrate, in this case, of soil, precursing the growth of our food. And so it really creates this analogy for life that I try to convey in those lectures to people that, hey, what's happening at your level microcosmically towards your health is being mirrored in our global and in our community health as well. And it motivates people to take a different look at their choices from not just a personal one, but also from a macro one in where we choose to put our dollars.
You know, I was doing a lecture about a month or so ago, and I was having a conversation with one of the people after the training, and we had a great chat, and it was wonderful. And we were sitting there talking. She says, it's interesting how many people around the world go to their health food store, their acupuncturist, their herbalist first. And it's like they're starting a jigsaw puzzle, but they're starting the puzzle with the other side of the fence. And if there are any pieces that are missing, they go to the medical establishment to fill those places. Where most people in this country, for the longest period of time, they start doing the puzzle with the doctors or many tests or many pharmaceuticals. And no matter what, they've always got pieces missing. So we're the last resort to fill those pieces of the puzzle. So it is a mentality. It's also an awareness. It's a trust. And that's why relationships make such a difference. And I mean, doing radio shows for as many years as I did, well over 40 years, I would have people that will say, I heard what you said. I want to have a conversation with you. And I'd say, no, that's great. They said, because I've been having this conversation with my doctor, and for whatever reason, they don't want to have it with me. And I would usually say, well, then it's time to fire your doctor and get a doctor that will listen. Because if you hire a plumber and you're working in the kitchen and they're not fixing the leak, you get another plumber. And the thing is, we live in a world right now where you can be choosing who you want to go to. You have a better choice today. You have people, especially in the medical community, who are much more aware, much more engaged, much more educated. So they're having conversations. I mean, look at the doctors today that are writing handwritten prescriptions for vitamin D and magnesium and a multiple and probiotics and enzymes and sending people to the health food store. We didn't have this 45 years ago when I started. When I started, the doctors that I knew near UCLA used to come to the back door of the vitamin store after hours to pick up their vitamins because, God forbid, their colleagues saw them in the front of a health food store. So we've come a long way, but you need to be able to have the conversation. And I tell people, these are the two things you need to do. Make a list of all the supplements that you take and also add all the prescription medications that you have, and always have this on your computer, print it, so that if you make a change and you go to the doctor, you're not sitting there and trying to remember everything that you do. Just put the piece of paper with your paperwork, let them put it in your file. And then if you make updates, update the computer at home. And then every time you add or subtract, make a new copy, because we forget. I mean, I've literally been at the doctor's before and I've sat there and I'm like, are you serious? I have to make a list? This is going to take like a week. So I actually sat down one day and made my list. And so I just said, here, this is everything I use. And I think that's important, but you have to have the conversation, but you also have to have willing partners on both sides of the conversation that will allow you and them to have their conversation as well. And we need to do that. And I think being more comfortable talking with somebody in a health food store may just give you the confidence to do that.
Sure. I think a lot of people, there's that anonymity that makes it easier to have those conversations at the health food store too. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've heard things from people I had no expectation at all to find out about a complete stranger. But retail breeds some fascinating conversations.
True.
It's
true.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, that brings up a really good point. Sometimes people are intimidated and they don't want to open up completely. And, for them, they may not want to give their name and give all that kind of stuff, but they still are looking for answers because maybe the internet has just fed them what they wanted to hear and not exactly what they needed to hear. because the internet has been a double-edged sword. I find myself now, I find information that I want to utilize, and I think to myself, okay, now I need to research to make sure that it actually is true, or does it just sound really, really good? So, and I think they get fearful of that as well.
It's indicative of it goes back to even what we started this conversation with. Everybody's symptom doesn't come from the same source or root. And so I'm 58 years old Saturday, and
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I was always a big runner. I was a competitive runner in high school, fell away for decades. And I was like, I want to get back. I want to feel that exhilaration, whatever it is that it does for me. It does something for me. And, as I ran, a lot of great things occurred. But one thing that started happening was I started getting pain in my feet, and it was definitely radiating. So it was nerve and all, people are like, oh, you got to get your blood sugar tested. And somebody else like, oh, it's, neuropathy from this. And there's all these different possibilities, and your racing mind goes, oh, I need to do this or I need to do that. So I talked to a lady who went to a tennis shoe store that we all know. And the guy said, hey, she expressed to me that he told her she ties her tennis shoes too tight. So I take this information. I'm like, I wonder. And I'm one of these guys, just boy, every eye all the way up, tight as, and sure enough, required no herbs, no vitamins, no drugs, not even a blood sugar test. By golly, it took loosening my shoes. It's, I guess, to underscore what I meant by that in the conversation.
But think of it this way, we do have a tendency, myself included, to make everything a lot more difficult than it needs to be. And I am an overthinker of overthinkers, and I can beat a dead horse till there's nothing left but powder. And that's me. Everybody knows that about me. But I do it for the right reasons, and I do it because I'm passionate, and I do it because I want to learn. But many times it kind of gets me in trouble. So sometimes when something, manifests in front of me and it's an easy solution, rather than just trying to accept it, I try to ruin it, saying there's no way possible that it could happen. But I've learned, just like you did with the shoelaces, that sometimes it doesn't have to be a difficult solution. I found some solutions to things in the last probably couple of years that were so incredibly easy. And I thought to myself, I just need to open my mind. I think we all do.
It's that inner dialogue. It really, so many people speak to it, and I don't know if it's going to be the big jump, I think, in social consciousness as well, when the majority of us take the time to not take external experience as the only driver for information about ourselves and our personal experience, to go in and have this inner evaluation. I think needs to start taking place on a very broad level, for people to truly get at the root of their condition, but also their interaction with other people and the plants and the supplements. What health food, it engenders this industry that we work in. It engenders a conversation at a deeper and deeper level that a lot of people can leave with their nutrients, and they do some research on the internet, they look into some books, and they start to evaluate themselves again with maybe 5-element theory, or just maybe prescription for nutritional healing, giving a variety of reasons why you may be in this state or that state. That capacity leads to a further evolution of our inner world and relationship. And I think that that's going to be the foundation of a more peaceful culture and society that hopefully is in the infant stages now.
People around the world live different lives. They look at things differently, and that's wonderful. And I think we have the right to be able to do that. I do think that our biggest failure has been putting way too much trust and confidence in the food manufacturers in this country. I think that we have allowed processed foods and great tasting, terrible food to become way too important to us. I think we forgot the main purpose of food intake was to revitalize, rebuild, rejuvenate, rehydrate, relubricate the body
Hmm.
and repair. Because, you go back to the 1800s when people would go out and work the farm all morning. Then they come in about, late morning and they'd eat this gigantic meal. Now, it wasn't to sit down and talk cuisine. They weren't watching the cooking channel. They were eating food that they knew where the food came from. The whole idea was sustenance to replace what they lost and give them the strength that after lunch and a short rest, they'd go back out in the fields, work the farm for another 6 or 7 hours, come back and eat another huge meal, and then they would relax in the evening time because food was not a social event. Food was just a way of, okay, I have to get up, I have to work, I have to eat so that I can work. I need to replace what I've lost. Today everything we do is centered around food. And when we're
Yep.
depressed, when we're happy, when we're going through grief, when we're celebrating happiness, food is our friend. We use food for everything. And we have to start thinking of food as a warrior, as a replacement, and a way of causing our body to be more sustainable itself rather than just a way of what tastes good on our palate today.
Well, I agree. And I think that what we're seeing presently, since we've just referenced where the industry was when we started to what it's become,
Mhm.
I like to point this out to people all the time, particularly the newer clerks at the stores. When I entered and you entered, there was about a 4 foot, it might have been 6 foot, but about a 4 foot section of proteins. It was usually entirely packed full of spiritine in the early days, right? Like 18 different flavors. But there was 7 different homeopathic companies, 12 different herbal companies, both in tincture and in capsule, and it covered the shelves.
Yep.
Now, presently, I call it chocolate milk, but we have a 20-foot section of flavored powders with protein and all these varied and sundry items included, and bars, huge sets of vitamins, single nutrients, etc. And this really small plant section that built the industry, whether
Yep.
homeopathically or herbally. And I think it's indicative of much of what you're saying, that relationship with food. We're doing the same thing now with health. is now becoming, it must be flavorful. And then we cross into this new boundary because of money and labels. People are starting to read labels. So now I've got, not to gin up a new topic that's pretty contentious, but we can hide things in natural flavors, even organic natural flavors that, might not be the best for, say, blood sugar spiking. I'm going to try to refrain from, pigeonholing and pegging things, but it's fascinating. And they're loaded into all this health food material. And so it's about flavor. And I need my healthy things to taste like dessert.
Yep.
And we're, because of this desire to turn and to bring in new consumers, we're just literally repeating what was done in conventional in health.
Yep.
And I think we're blurring the line significantly. And for fear that we might lose in favor of margin and turns, what used to be margin and turns earned for health. It's a big difference has taken place.
No, it's absolutely true. And like I said, back to that mindset around the world, there are places in the world where when people are dealing with health conditions, they want to know where it started, back to the root conversation. They want to know what they can do. They want to find out how they got there rather than just how to get away from it. They want to know how I arrived here in the first place. And diet food is looked at that way we talked about before. It's looked as sustenance and replacement for the body and nutrients. Where here we have to have this kind of metamorphosis. I think we're starting it. I think it's starting. I think people are actually starting to look at their food. I think people are reading labels, to your point, which is amazing. I think people are starting to shop the perimeter of the grocery store and hitting the vegetables and the fruits and the protein and the bakery and the dairy, and, not hitting all the end caps in the middle where all the processed food is. I think people are thinking about it more. But it's going to be a journey because we have deviated off the path a long way. And I know we all want to feel better. We want to get healthy. We want to be healthy. We want to stay healthy. But sometimes we don't want the work that's involved. We just want the magic wand.
Sure. I mean, there's that combination of culpability between manufacturer and consumer. Mm-hmm. And both need to be playing equal parts in order to provide what the other is looking to find.
I think that's a really good point as well. Do you think as an industry we're heading in the right direction?
I think it's yes, in terms of reaching a broader demographic. And I think that's fantastic. I started off I worked with the Tilth as an apprentice before the USDA got involved in organic. And when the USDA took over, I was disillusioned by what I saw. I was maybe a little bit, of a, young perfectionist, I couldn't see through certain changes that they made enough to want to pursue a career after those initial couple of years as an apprentice out in Oregon. But what was fascinating, I didn't lose my desire for organic and the values I saw in that type of agriculture and the resulting food. But the same level of organic farms and processors seem to continue up until about 2012 or 13. A great big company today that's been purchased by one of our global companies. Really, and I was fortunate to work for them. And they brought organic, I feel, to the masses in a way that it had not yet done so. And so there's a lot of other parts of that, bars and all these different, flavored drinks and whatnot that kind of pull away from where I would like it to be. But the number of organic farms and people that are familiar with certified organic today, I don't know if it wasn't a disservice. It was certainly a service to have a big health food company like that bring it out and be as successful as they were with it. However, then there's the other side of the coin that some of the vehicles for that, whether it was, again, candy bar type approaches to nutrition and protein probably doesn't serve our best ends. In my opinion, it's kind of like drinking Diet Coke, not to pigeonhole them, but diet sodas still can have the same effect on our bodies as eating sugar in terms of developing diabetes too. So I question the vehicle of our industry and its improvement, but I think it's improved in terms of its reach. Its availability is profound. I think huge organizations like Whole Foods played a great, big, gigantic part in that. There's two sides of that coin too. I love what it's become. I miss what it's lost along the way. And I do think that some of the founders from the early days that are still here are putting forth, some of them are still in the game and are putting forth a fantastic effort to both re-energize the truth of the whole plants, but to actually take that, what started as organic, into that next level of regenerative organic. And it's profound what I think is being birthed out of this. I think there's some people who see where we've gotten to, that we've got this bigger audience, but where we can possibly go to next that will hurdle beyond the things that I'm calling out now that maybe aren't the best, into a new future that I think is going to be better across the board, where we're going to have great soil, great food, remarkable consumers that understand what it is that they're looking for and where it comes from, both as a supplement as well as food. And that's what's neat, is there are those people that have been here 30, 40, even 50 years on the manufacturing side, and they're growing right along with it, and they haven't lost their roots and their heart.
When I first started in the industry, and thank you for that, I think that was so well put together. When I started in the industry 46 years ago, first of all, I had hair, so it was a long time ago.
Me too.
But, back then, our industry was more of a fad and a luxury. It was something that you did because you thought it was perplexing and kind of interesting, and you wanted to take one of those vitamin things, and, you wanted to do it. But, with all of the knowledge and all of the technology that we've created over this 45-year period, we brought great information, great studies, great published works, many books, many authors, many experiments along the way. We've learned that there is wonderful things that can be had at really looking at your health and well-being and supplementing and utilizing what Mother Nature has to offer and the great combinations and the blends that are available today. But I think our impatience is something we're still fighting. That's a big speed bump. Our dedication to making change that we're not really open to because we want it. We really want it, but we don't want to do what it takes to get there. Number three, our consistency is something we're still working on, being able to be a little bit more religious about what you're doing. But I think the bottom line is, and I think Rick Scalzo has had the key to this many years, like he did with Gaia for many years, and like he's doing with Kokora now. His whole idea is to be a front-loading nutritional company, meaning his mindset is if people feel something faster and they get results a little sooner and they see some kind of a change or make a change or feel something different, they're more apt to stick with something longer because then it kind of overrides the impatience that's out there. But we're impatient. I mean, everything, look how fast phones are going now. My first phone was this big and it had a handle on it. It was like it was like a suitcase. And today you could do everything. You can at the speed of a second. I mean, who would have thought that I could send a text to somebody around the world like that and answer back? I mean, it's amazing technology. But where did we forget ourselves in the technology? Because if we're not healthy, we're not going to be here to enjoy all the hard work of the technology. So we need to funnel some of our focus to the things that we love to play with and our toys and put some of that back toward ourselves so that we're in a better place to enjoy those toys and that technology. And one of the biggest motivators I'm always sorry to see is that someone gets a bad blood workup or they, God forbid, get very deathly ill or they almost pass away, they almost die, or they're dealing with something chronic. It's amazing how motivating that is. If we could just take that motivation and do it just because we know we should, the world would be a healthier place.
Well, sure. I've said numerous times, an instant gratuity lifestyle demands an instant gratuity rectification or fix. And so people who have become accustomed to living for gratification of the senses in a faster and more immediate manner are looking for a fix to the problem without changing the behavior in a rapid manner, a rapid fix. And so it's really changing perspective entirely has to take place. And that's where I think, again, what I love about the plant world and when it slows everything down because they gestate over the course of a year, even the winter months. There is a gestation of the perennial that's happening underground, and we can emulate nature if we take time to look. It's like, I'll work out 7 days a week and 12 months a year, and the world doesn't operate that way.
No.
And I try very hard to actually amend myself to the seasons, the way I eat, the way I exercise, the way I sleep, to greater or less success. But as I get older, I almost have become better And I'm surely healthier mentally than I've ever been in my past. And I think you hit on something. It takes something painful oftentimes to make these transitions. And I myself, too, fell victim to myself. And it ultimately usually all comes together into one gigantic, painful life experience. And I'm thankful for the one that I had to face, about 8 years ago. And to be honest, my wife and daughter have benefited more than anyone by having made those changes. So sometimes I think nature, works that way. But we're a part of nature, is what I always tell everybody. We keep trying to just separate ourselves out and leave nature be. It's like, no, you're part of nature.
That's right.
And there's an old quote that goes back to the medieval alchemists. Without aid, nature fails. And there's a lot that can be read into that particular quote.
I'm stealing that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No, I love it. Jason, thank you for being here today. Before we go, first of all, will you come back and see me again?
Love to.
And number two, would you leave everybody with a thought for the day?
The man of empiricism must precede the man of science. John Uri Lloyd.
I love that. No, I love that. I hope you've enjoyed this today. I've been speaking with Jason Hunolt today, and if you like what you've heard, make sure you go to my webpage, drjeffreyburke.com, tap on the Honest Health logo. It'll take you to Spotify for the audio version. But if you want to see smiling faces, tap on the YouTube logo. It'll take you to YouTube. Of course, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. I hope you've enjoyed this today. Jason, thank you so much for being here. What an absolute pleasure. And thank you for what you've done, what you're doing, and what you're going to do down the road.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day, everybody. God bless.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.